Good evening. We're at the very end of this Passaporta festival, and I would like to invite you to hang on to the screen just a little bit longer. Or in the words of author Max Porter, take a seat, why don't you? Because that's the opening line in each of the 7 chapters in this exquisite book. It's an interpretation and evocation of the last days of Francis Bacon in Madrid. I say interpretation, I say chapters, but that's probably not the correct word, not the correct term. I can say chapters, I can say sketches, I can say ideas, lost words, feelings, emotions, all of that together and more at the same time, as it often goes in the work of Max Porter. Maybe you were already seated and you watched the author read his text for you, the text he created for the Passaporta Festival, which you can still find at passaporta.be. And that's a warm reminder to watch it. Max Porter, good evening.
Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. It's good to be here with you. I presume that you could have guessed that would be my opening line, right? It's good to be here with you.
I set you up.
Mm-hmm.
Is it good?
The text?
No, being here with me.
Well, it's not real, is it?
This is how I feel. I was just thinking, what's the primary difference between being there in Brussels, talking to you, meeting you as a human being, and what's the difference between this? And I unavoidably fall to thinking that if this were to be the way it is forever, we would lose. There would be losses. And I try and think what they might be, and I try and be positive about what can be achieved by the technology. But I want to be more, not less. And one of the reasons I set about that piece in the way I did was to try and ask myself and you, the notional you, as well as actually in your cameo appearance, what are we asking ourselves about this? What other ways might we think about it?
Mm-hmm.
Are we thinking about it enough, or are we just doing it because it's sort of rapacious, the ball thing we have to do? We have to take our things online. We have to keep on doing these things. So yeah, I only ask you: is it good? I mean, personally, do you like this format? Do you like the Zoom screen? Are you at home in this?
I hate it, but let's not get into it because then we might lose the viewers who are watching it. Let's do this and let's make it good. Because it's interesting what you said. You said, are we thinking enough about it? And that's what your text did to me. I read it, it was vibrant, and I felt alive reading it. And I thought, yeah, it is good. But at the same time, it made me think of what we're missing. And is it correct that I think you think, that I think that you think that we're not thinking enough about it?
I don't think we probably are thinking enough about it, but I recognise that that's one of the conditions of the condition, the human condition, is that we cannot think too much about it, otherwise we'd all go mad. But I suppose what I wanted to suggest in this piece, and in responding to the generous invitation of Passaporta to think in this way, is were we thinking enough about it before? Why did we invite authors to talk about their work? Why do we put literary authors on a slightly different stage or even pedestal than we do writers of fantasy or crime fiction or children's books? What is the author's responsibility when accepting or declining one of those invitations? I've become very self-conscious and analytical almost about what those invitations mean and what the responsibility is, and is my responsibility as white middle-class male different to someone else's, and in what way can I respond that might be more inclusive or work collaboratively hand in hand with an institution to make sure that they're checking their beat, or whatever it is. You know, there's 360 ways of thinking about any body on a stage talking to any audience. And so I suppose I took the invitation to be a bit time traveling in my thinking about this interaction we're having. What was it before? What is it now? What's worth preserving? What might this might be a possibility. This moment might be an opportunity for some more progressive thinking about the way we were talking about books, particularly when, I've been uneasy, maybe we spoke about this last time, about the encounter between interviewer and author as tied only to the promotion of an individual title as a thing to sell. And if you were to take that out of the capitalist structure and maybe not make it just about book to sell, then what am I? Am I a performer? What am I? Someone that has ideas, or am I someone that is merely presenting the work I'm trying to sell? And why aren't the membranes therefore between music and art and theatre and comedy and education and politics and activism? Why aren't those membranes all a bit thinner? And this might be a moment where we are able to do that possibly more freely than we were before in person.
In your answer to that question, you've asked 72 questions, I guess. Do you have any answers for yourself now? Is it clearer in this strange momentum in life that we're all experiencing? Everybody in their way is thinking about what they're doing, why they're doing it, what they have been doing and what they will be doing in the future. Has it changed something? Do you have answers, other answers than you thought?
No, but I am much more committed to the asking, I think. I don't necessarily think it's the novelist's job to have these answers. I mean, I know epidemiologists have more answers, statisticians have more answers, the propaganda departments of modern political parties have more answers. I'm more committed to asking the questions, and I think that some of the thinking I had about hybridity as a literary form have, I think, become. I think my convictions have deepened in that regard. That I want to move sideways more. I want to make my books more like plays. I want to make my encounters with audiences more like conversations. I want to make my essayism more exploratory. I certainly don't want to be writing the same thing again and again. And I think I want other people on the stage with me, wherever possible. I think I've learned this year by collaborating very freely with people. I've been collaborating with musicians, TV, film, theatre. And what I've learned is that the epiphanies that come when you have another skill set, another set of expertise brought to bear on your own project, being translated and translating other people. That is a way to grow. Like the best conversations I've had this year on this format have been with people whose writing I'm helping with their writing. I've been mentoring people right across the social spectrum and across the literary spectrum. And it's good for all sorts of reasons. I enjoy it for all sorts of reasons. I hope it benefits people. But selfishly, I have to admit that it benefits me hugely. Because when I'm talking about why are we writing, why do we do the form we do, why do we edit, are we editing enough, how does the editorial brain meet the critical brain, how does the pure creative self reconcile itself to the more, to the other aspects, the more market-based or professional aspects. Those things, when I talk to other people about them, I begin to see for myself what I'm involved in and what I'm doing.
Okay.
And how I might do it better or differently. So I suppose the reason I wrote the piece for Passaporto in this way is to say not so much do I have any answers to these questions, but how might I bring other vocabularies, other sensibilities, other viewpoints into my own question-asking machinery.
Yeah. Because the place of an author on stage, it's interesting that you bring it up immediately, because it's one of the things I got out of your text is, am I allowed to read something of your text? Is that okay? This is one of the. It's one of
my voice.
Yeah. I'll do your voice. This is one of the hybridity things, right? So it's okay. It's so good to be here with you, because we are encouraged to believe that literature is private, solitary, different to other art forms, therefore more or less likely to survive, depending who you ask. I mean, don't ask me. That's what you say. I think it's plain extraordinary that anyone sits still, lets strangers' words in, allows themselves to be transported for hours at a time. It is frankly perverted, which is why it will survive. That was one of the more gripping passages for me, because there's a strong belief. I mean, you have all questions about what is literature, and it has to be out of the boundaries and cooperating and changing. But there is a strong belief, though.
Yes. I think what I want to get in that piece is the sheer strangeness of the literary activity, separate, distinct from other art forms, and that its solitary nature is profoundly central to that. That we do have to be on our own, usually holding a physical thing, and hearing voices in our heads, and it takes time. It's not instantaneous on us like music, and it's not defined by technical boundaries like the theatre is, or watching a movie or an episode of TV is. We are master of our own time, and yet utterly powerless because we're in the author's time. And we can chuck it across the room anytime we like. So the decision not to stick with it for 20, 30, 40 hours of our lives, living in this simulacral world of whatever it is, be it 18th century Germany or Mars. I think that increasingly, A, is quite a radical proposition in terms of the way we spend the rest of our time, and B, quite an extraordinary honour if you're a writer, that people are willing to give you that time, willing to be your audience for that amount of time. And I only have a bit of fun with this piece, suggesting it's sort of perverted, in order to, I guess this is a concern across my work, is to sort of heighten the awareness of the. I guess what I mean really is the sort of eroticism, the kind of ecstasy of that possibility, and also why it is the most highly charged political space we have, because you're asking someone to be very involved collaboratively in the decoding of your signs and signals and messages in the work. So yeah, I find it stranger than ever and more interesting than ever. And the more we, in these current strange circumstances, the more we spend looking at one another and looking through a screen, the more pleasurable in a sort of deep, embodied and bodily way I find the fact that I can speak off and read a book on my own this evening. Extraordinary, simply extraordinary.
Yeah, it's an extremely intimate relation in that way. Are you aware of that relation while you're writing?
Yes, touch as well, physicality of it, and the movement of the eye across the page, and how I can break that, and how I can have simultaneity going on. I can have voices in head, but I can also marshal attention. I can deliberately invoke other literary forms or sensibilities or smells or sounds. I can reference so many different things at any one time, and I can trust that my reader is a highly sophisticated interpreter or receptor of those signs as well. So I'm thinking about it all the time, and I'm also aware, my work is always visual on the page because I come at it from that end of things. I'm quite a visual thinker. And I stop and draw and think about shape and form and composition and compositional energy and juxtapositional energy between different components of the text. And I'm aware that is going to be a physical thing on the page, and therefore how to play with my reader. And I don't mean in the manipulatory sense. I mean, how do we both do a bit of building and unpacking and thinking and feeling together? Mm-hmm. And how is the page my accomplice as well as my limit?
This text for Passaporta, it felt like, I think it are your words, correct me if I'm wrong, like a poetic rant. It feels, when you read it, it feels as if you were sitting behind your desk and it was ready. It just came out, right? I mean this in the most positive way. Might look differently, but I mean...
No.
Is it something you? How does this emerge? Is it already in your mind? They ask you a question. It's you have to do it, and it keeps on working in your mind, and then it's there, or is it you start and then you rewrite it and then you work on it? How did this one emerge?
Well, I would only accept an invitation if I think I have something that might be interesting to say. And so I begin by asking myself, do you have anything interesting to say on this subject? And also, what are the pre-existing emotional and political attachments to this place, Passaporta? They're strong. I liked it. I like you. I want to help out. I want to, if I can, be doing projects in Europe at this moment for us in England. So there's already a lot. There's already a lot to make me want to do it, and then there's a lot to already think about. The going and the not going. So I thought, yes, I'll think. And then I have a lovely thing, which is that however stressed out or worried I am about a project, however much I'm lying awake at 3 a.m., just as you're getting up, I'm lying there going,
it's a good idea.
I've got to do that thing. I've got, the leaky roof, the mortgage, the bills, the various different crises here and abroad, at the end of the world, the ecological crisis, my children, the sort of roll call of stress. Out of that energy of panic or self-consciousness or existential despair, one begins to find a literary form, a way out, like I said, an essaying, like a movement that you can do between your anxiety and your creativity. And I think that begins to have almost something quite alluring in that questioning. So I think, how boring if I just say what I think? What if I answer myself back? So what if I set up a conversation between may or may not be Max Porter conversing with may or may not be Ruth, or may not be another Max Porter, or you wearing my mask or me wearing yours, and start to ask, did you really mean that? What do you mean it's good? Or what do you mean you love Brussels? What's Brussels? Or why do you have any right to talk about that? Or, and then I think that from that point, I just need a blank piece of paper, and I start. And then in comes all the things that I'm really pleased to say just always come in, which is the body and the physicality and the sense of my interest in denial and what we aren't thinking about when we're in a place, and what we really are thinking about if we're being honest, and trying to be a little bit more honest, and then also trying to stand up. I'm always trying to be a little bit satirical about, particularly men taking themselves seriously or thinking what they're saying is important. So then in that all comes in, and then suddenly I've got 2,000 words, and that's all I'm quite the right. So
over and done with. Okay. You said there's a white page, and then you said, happy to say it always comes. Is that a concern that one day maybe it won't come?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. Because if it doesn't come, it doesn't come. It's fine. I'll go for a walk. I'll draw a picture. I'll talk to my children. I'm not someone that fetishizes the literary product so much. I believe I must keep producing, keep selling. If I've got nothing to say, God forbid, I would just stop saying it. And also at other times, shut up and let other people say it more interestingly than you can yourself. But also, I am just I'm a maker. If I'm locked in a prison cell with nothing, then I will draw on the walls with my fingernails. I love to make things. I find the world incredibly interesting. So even if I could think of nothing to say for this brilliant festival that has asked me to write a piece, then fine, I'll go off and tinker around with something else.
Yeah.
I don't. The idea of writer's block as well. Writing as performance, writing as problem solving, writing as self-expression, writing as activism. There are so many different types of writing. If one is blocked, try another. Okay. And then even then, have you written to everyone you love to tell them how much you love them? Because you can't be blocked on that. Or have you written a shopping list? Or have you looked in the shed at that stack of old newspapers you got and thought, where was I in 2005 when that was happening? Or have I written to my Prime Minister to tell him how disgusted and ashamed I am? There's lots to write.
Have you written them?
I've never written to him. I think he would. I don't think he answers those emails. I think that would be a waste of ink. Or
Okay.
waste of digital ink.
But in a way, you did in this text for Passaporta, right?
I think in all my texts I probably am. I mean, it's pretty visible there in some of the work I've been doing recently. But also, you sign the petitions. You do what you can. You try and make your little mark. Go and stand on the street with a handmade sign.
Yeah. I hear a little sigh there when you talk about him or about the political situation. When I got your text, well, it's the same with other texts that are written in this specific moment. I'm always scared that it's because we're full of the COVID thing and the COVID moments and the big questions. Sometimes I think I want to read something that has nothing to do with it. I'm very scared that for the next 20 years we will have COVID novels. And then I thought, oh, maybe he's doing that too. Is that one of your concerns, right? Writing this piece at this momentum in time and thinking, should I write about this situation or shouldn't I? Should we escape with literature or should we be with our 2 feet in this mess we're in?
Well, my approach to this, I suppose, is always you can do both.
Mm-hmm.
Like Lanny was about now, it was about Englishness, but I never mentioned the B word. Last year I became very preoccupied with deep time, partly is because I'm interested in it. In fact, when I was in Brussels to see you for the first time, I was reading a book about Doggerland, when Europe and England were joined before the last ice age. And I suppose that was when I began reading about this stuff. But I was thinking, do you write? So say you write about, like I wrote a script last year for a friend. It's going to become a film, and it's a monologue about shame, male shame specifically, and the idea of an apology to those closest to you, but also more broadly from men to women, and then more widely, Homo sapiens to the planet, until it became a sort of unpacking of the idea of an apology, and where do you begin and where do you end, and is it possible to find a language that expands out of the specifics of our time? And in that piece, which I wrote before the pandemic, before I'd ever heard of a COVID-19, there's a sort of refrain at the beginning that says, someone is waking up to do their radio show, someone is going to sleep, a leaf is turning brown and falling off a tree at the same time as well. It was a sort of poetic overture. And one of the lines in that was, a virus blossoms on a continent and science puts it to bed, or something like that. A virus blossoms somewhere.
It's all your fault. It's all your fault.
Not only is it my fault, but I have to figure out what to do now.
The artist is the visionary. Yeah.
But where we can say, mad scientist, yeah, you don't know what I'm creating in this lab.
Yeah.
But what are our concerns? They've always been this.
Mm-hmm.
This interrelationship between us. How are we living? Are we too dependent on X? Isn't it bizarre that we get our raspberries from Morocco? I've never been to Morocco, but I eat Moroccan raspberries every morning with my breakfast. Isn't that utterly, utterly extraordinary? What happens when we get ill? How do we care for our dead? Why do bankers earn so much and nurses earn so little? How do we deal with the people that are sick, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And so I was already, like we all were, we were thinking, does capitalism sharpen its teeth at a time like this? Or does it look at itself in the mirror and realize that perhaps it's not compassionate enough and certainly not sustainable? Of course it doesn't do that. The richer get richer, poorer get poorer, and the vulnerable people are exposed or left to die. Britain during this pandemic has been an astonishing model of how injustice functions and exploitation. And so I think we were thinking about those things anyway, so you certainly don't want to start writing about them directly in a way that's going to tie them to this very bleak moment. I'm a bit like, A.M. Holmes doesn't have mobile phones or Twitter or anything in some of her early novels because she didn't want them to date. I suppose I slightly feel the same.
Okay. Maybe that...
I'm writing a novel at the moment where I think I'm going to get rid of all the proper nouns. So it's going to be highly specific about what it's about, but it's also going to have the quality of a fable because it could be anyone.
Okay.
And this is, I think, the same thing as the essay I wrote for Passaporta is it you talking? Is it me talking? It doesn't matter if we're listening, we're listening.
Question from Doreen, that because you mentioned Lanny and you mentioned our relationship to the natural world, she has a question. Questions are welcome, by the way. If people are watching and have a question for Max Porter, we're very welcome to read them. I will read this question from Doreen. She says, there appear to be a series of writers writing books that feature humans' relationship with the natural world more centrally. Lanny is in this list, and I wonder whether you wrote intentionally about that close relationship, or was it just a byproduct of a story about a boy and his disappearance? Smart girl, Doreen.
Yeah, I like this question. Yes, I think it's a byproduct because I started with the humans. But as soon as I started to write about those two humans, the old man and the young boy, and the mythic character, I realized that the environment and the relationship to the natural world was going to be the unifying principle, the sort of beating heart of that book, both explicitly in their relationship to the natural world, but also metaphorically, the sort of philosophy of their relationship and their unease with the ways of human beings in the world was going to be an environmental question, and one utterly of our time, an Anthropocene environmental question. And that's partly because children are so intuitive and advanced in their thinking, sometimes accidentally, and partly because I'm an animist, and so I'm interested in the relationship between human beings and other living things, and why human superiority in nature is such a tyrannical idea and has done so much damage and continues to do so much damage. This is when the British tabloids call me a hippie. And I say thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking, is that a bad thing for you to be called a hippie?
Badge of honor, yeah. Tree hugging. Of course. Why wouldn't you hug a tree? They literally give us life.
Let's switch to this one. This precious little thing with so much in it. When you were here last time, when we talked about Lanny, I remember you saying, I want it to be more a song than literature, when you talked about Lanny. And now you switched to paintings. You want this to be paintings, well, among other things. Because I struggled with trying to introduce it. Are it chapters? Is it intimations? What is this? You tell us.
Flare-ups,
Flare-ups.
weather systems, little storms, little electrical storms in the mind to do with what happens when you look, and what's joining you as you look, your history, everything you've ever seen, everything you've ever smelt, every time you've ever understood the relationship between touch and representation. Everything he's ever seen, all the paintings he's ever seen, the history of Western art, sex, death, money, ego, paranoia, hubris. And then you add to that the fact that he's dying, shame, guilt, fear, medicine, care, confession,
Go on.
psychoanalysis, being on bed, talking
in 74 pages, right? In 74 pages. We could go on for half an hour. Yeah. So it's the last days of his life. He dies in Madrid, Francis Bacon. Would you mind reading us just a little excerpt just to get in touch with this book for everyone who's watching?
Can't you say, instead, your father or horses? And I would reply, quick as a flash, horses! I never spare my father a thought, but I think of horses often. I invented things to make the interviews interesting, and sometimes, as I said them, I realized these things were true, intoxicating ways to think oneself into shape, very much like painting. Anyway, anything but Francis Bacon, por favor, torment. I'm ever so sick of myself. Close your eyes then, and we will now paint together this expensive, scandalous canvas, and you can prepare your lies. I didn't think about it, I just made it. It was unforeseen. Painting is being handed things I don't know where my ideas come from. I'm compelled by inner storms to dollop a swastika on. Poor mew-stuck bubble dweller, budge over 6 foot square, herringbone tight and ready, room for the two of us, two of them.
Okay, we get an idea now. That was very fast.
Well, it has to be, I think, because the brain, when you're looking at a painting, is so fast. I mean, if you cause it not, I mean, there are moments of great stillness in this book, I hope. But I think that what I was trying to get at is the speed of thought, or the sort of bombard, or the sort of the surface of thought, and what interrupts and intrudes upon it. Because it would have been terribly, terribly boring to write a book about the painter Francis Bacon, which is a bit like a biography, and you find out a lot about him, and you find out what his pictures are like, and there might even be a picture, so you can check what the picture looks like. I can't write that. It would be awful for everybody. So I have to try and deepen the mystery, as he said.
As he said, yeah, he was good at that. Tell us, why Francis Bacon?
Because of all the baggage. Mm-hmm. Most famous painter in England in the 20th century, a European painter, utterly obsessed with Europe and the European tradition, in love always with Europe, sending himself up, creator of his own hagiography in a way, curator of his own myth, just such an irresistible thing for me to puncture and lay down and peer at. I suppose also I had an obsession with him when I was a teenager. And I wanted now to look back at that obsession in the way I might look back at my obsession with nuclear bombs or John Coltrane and think, who was I then? What did I think Francis Bacon was then? How did it speak to me then? How have I now changed? Was it the body? Was it the painting? Was it the shot? Was it the philosophical candor about the human body as animal, as meat? Was it the violence? Was it, in fact, the slight artifice, the kind of high camp performance of truth that is, in fact, not very truthful? Because I went on to fall in love with very, very different types of art. I'm not particularly a fan of figurative painting, but Bacon has this hold on me, and I wanted to see what that hold is. And also, I was writing a novel about something very quiet and beautiful, and it was locked down, and I felt this desire to. I suppose, in a way, what I felt a little bit like a child making a model. I wanted to create a little scene, 2 people in a room, and put some bodies in it and start playing with their brains and their language. And I think that was quite a good lockdown project. I was sat where I am sat now, and I spent 3 weeks looking at the paintings of Francis Bacon all the time I had Bacon on my screen. And I started to think, how would you write well about that? What would you have to leave behind, and what would you have to use? And I was aware it was a very niche product. I didn't honestly expect anyone to want to publish it, but I very much enjoyed writing it.
Yeah. You asked some questions.
And I put the novel away.
You what? I didn't get that. You what?
I put the novel. Francis Bacon won the battle.
Yeah. He won.
The novel I was writing is on the shelf. I've abandoned it. I've started a new novel. But Francis Bacon persevered, scrabbled out of the canvas,
Typically him. Was it this? Was it that? Was it also in a Francis Bacon painting? A lot of things are happening at the same time. He's exceptionally good at capturing different things, movement also in painting, different sort of movements than we know in other paintings. So that made me feel like a certain kinship with what you try to do every time, and even more so as time goes on. Like there's so many things happening. Is that also what drew you towards him?
Just love that you say this. Francis Bacon was haunted by the impossibility of movement on the canvas. And right up until the end of his life, was desperately trying things, all the time sort of battling with the limitations of the representational effort and of paint, and scratching and splashing. Very late in his life, in the biography that's just come out, they describe him trying to get this sense of splash, and ended up just chucking paint at the canvas and going, oh, that works. And everyone going, but Francis, that's absolutely awful. That's terrible. And I suppose I am concerned with movement on the page. And previously I found it, we discussed this, I know, last year with Lanny, but I find that moving from A to B, if A is one literary approach and B is another, so a joke or domesticity, moving to nonsense poetry or sort of rat-a-tat syntax that move. It's not what A is and what B is, it's the movement between them. Mm-hmm. And I thought, is that movement in the subject itself inherent, or is that the reader creating that movement by flooding the work with the readers with the sort of sensibility and lived experience that they have from knowing these literary forms? Or can it be achieved as in the heartbeat, the sound on the page? Can I create pace, and then can I interrupt it? And can I have, is paying attention to things like syntax and rhyme and rhythm on the page, does that mean that I can actually have a physical sense of inertia or dizziness or accelerate, on the page? And I sort of think, that is existing in my other books, but with the Bacon book, it's a question of actually physically doing it, so that they go, what? I don't know what that means. And they feel a tiny bit exposed. And then they land on steadier ground and go, oh, right, this must be referring to Lucian Freud. Say, fine, Lucian Freud, I'm fine again. And they're sort of smacked sideways off the thing by something about Mussolini in a picture that they've just remembered in the back of their head from a warning. I think that can unnerve the reader in exactly the same way as a painting can unnerve the viewer. And also, the world interrupts. That's the crucial thing about this book. When you're looking at a painting, you're not in a special sealed off place where only painting is working on only viewer. And everything Francis Bacon intended is being beamed neatly into your brain. The correct answer. That's a preposterous thought. There are a trillion different experiences of that painting every time the brain gathers it and sends information into itself. So I think that, and also the world is there, the glass, the smell of the tape gallery, the coffee burp you've just done. This is what I say in the piece. You're there as human being, carrying your own trillions of sent and received images and signs. So the literary surface to try and get to that has to necessarily be incredibly cluttered. Unhelpfully so, which is why some people will hate this book.
You use the word unnerve. What do you mean by unnerve? Because I think a lot of people who know the work of Francis Bacon, it's a different thing of knowing it exists or seeing it in the flesh. It doesn't work on Zoom. If you're close to it, it's very discomforting. Is that maybe a good word? I don't know the exact word in English. Uncanny.
Yes.
It unsettles me. All those kind of things. Is that what you try to convey also in this book? Then, what is this? Was that a good feeling?
And I think,
okay.
Say you try and slow it down, right? So Ruth meets Bacon. So you might just off the top of my head, right? You might be like, is that the cheek, or is that a hole, or is that the cheek? Is the face moving? So that's actually the back of the head there, and I can see that funny hole there. Or is that supposed to be a scar? Or is that bone poking through there? And has he done that is that an actual gap in the surface there, or is that just a brush mark? Or is that actually just a reflection on the glass because it's so light in here? And actually, God, I wish I hadn't had that second copy because I'm slightly jittery and I now can't work out whether that's Bacon. You see what I mean? Like, it's utterly bespoke to the moment of that encounter. And into your head is going to come, the documentary you watched last night on Cambodia and the thing you're doing this afternoon and your own unease about the state of your body or the state of physical health or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I like that you can't say whether they're pictures or chapters or flashes, because they're somewhere in between all of those things. They're little reckonings, and they quite self-consciously say, I can only do such with language. This is a written thing. Yeah. And you can only do such a written. So let's sort of meet in the middle and admit that we're at least trying to get close to something that is painting's unique capability, unique skill.
I suppose you had a lot of questions after this book of people asking you how far you can go into this experiment, maybe. Nobody asks that if it's a video clip or if it's movies, then we're used to it, right? In our images around us, we're used to it. But if it's literature, then we think, "Whoa, this is difficult." That's something you have to fight against? Yeah.
Well, it's something I have to embrace, I think, which is why I'm in the book, because I'm also involved in what is a novel and what is this thing in relation to art history or visual analysis or art criticism. So, of course, I'm going to be in it, and I'm going to make reference to the same person that brought you the English myth or the Ted Hughes's Crow or whatever, because I know how novels are read. They're read according to what you've written before.
Yeah.
So it would have been coy of me to say, oh no, this is a new Max Corder. This is a Max Corder that writes about art. You know why I write the way I do, because I'm trying to get at the things I'm trying to get at. So there's a confessional artificiality, which I hope is to do with the uncanny that's inherent in reading books. Reading books should be like unheimlich by definition. They should be ringing bells and taking you back to primal memories, and images should overlap in ways that don't deliver clear or fixed meaning. And as it happens, I think that's why painting's such a fantastic thing to write about.
Yeah.
Because you're saying painting's a bizarre and artificial thing. Literature is a bizarre and artificial thing. Let's see how these two forms of artificiality can deliver truth.
Have we lost it a bit? The ability to read in that way? Are we used to very not maybe chronological, but very, the novel as a novel should be?
Do you think we have? I slightly think we have, yes. I mean, I slightly feel that the promises of modernism are now. Like I speak as an English person, and I think we're living in quite culturally conservative times here. And I quite frequently read the newspaper or read social media or read Amazon reviews and bang the table and say, "For God's sake, it's 100 years since Joyce," And we're now finding things a bit weird or a bit pretentious, or thinks he's very clever, or well. Literally, I read a review of a book recently, and it said she's humorless and of the academy and thinks she's very clever. I thought, what's wrong with those things?
Yeah,
we need an academy. It's where ideas grow, and we have to be. Without potential, we don't develop. We don't have an avant-garde, so we're just all going to make the same work that we've been making for years and years and years, and ask our readers to do their thinking. Like that, what would happen to poetry? The whole point of poetry is opacity. Meaning has to be thought. You don't know what a poem means when you first read it. You work at it, you learn it, and it doesn't deliver its meaning prepackaged for you on the surface. You have to live and read and think a lot before something unfolds, and that's the point. So, yes, is the answer. But I don't want to worry. The thing is, I don't want to get to the point where that becomes an act that the novelist has to grind.
Mm-hmm.
I want some very, I'm not a philosopher. I want some pleasures in a book to be right there on the surface. Bum jokes, and rhyme, or a little bit of poking, like my piece for Passaporta, a little bit of poking fun at Donald Trump, whatever.
No.
I want it all. I'm greedy. I want it all.
In the text of Passaporta is also the impossibility of tickling, because we're not close to each other. But I think I just tickled you and got this answer, the exact answer I wanted. You got really fired up. In the excerpt you read, there was something about an interview, and it comes back a few times because he was a master at giving interviews, right? The interviews are, if you go to a Francis Bacon exhibition, there's always interviews with him. Sometimes interviews with artists is what you skip when you go and watch a show in a gallery. But with him, it's a show, it's a performance, it's creating his own myth, of course. But boy, was he smart, wasn't he?
He was very smart. And he was lucky that he lived in a time when the very smart interviewer was sent to interview the very smart painter. Mm. And that was something that was necessary for our culture and would even be quite mainstream. Saturday Arts programme on the BBC is a 2-hour-long special with Francis Bacon getting drunk with Melvyn Bragg. Extraordinary. It doesn't happen anymore. We don't even have a book TV show. And if we do, we do have a couple on Sky, but they're popular authors talking about books, and it's no one is saying, hold on a minute, I've completely changed my mind about representational death of the artist and my view on Poussin. So I think that's one of the things I wanted in the book, but also I had this suspicion, right, that if I was asked, when you publish a book, your publisher will say, can you do us a thing to say what the book is about? So I did this thing where I say, hello, I can't bear the sound of myself on video, so I go, oh, hello, my name is Michael Porter, I've written a book about Francis Bacon, and it's sort of my attempt to write as painting. And as I said it, I knew that would be the line that the reviews would base themselves on.
Okay, yeah.
And I found that simultaneously depressing, but also utterly perfect to this project, because Francis Bacon's quotes about Francis Bacon, some of which he would have said when he was drunk or didn't even mean or came to regret, I know that's a stupid thing to say, are the things by which people hang Francis Bacon's paintings on. Because our critical faculties are so reliant on ready-made formulations for understanding the work, because we deem that to be more valuable than looking and deciding for ourselves what we see. So most of the review of the Francis Bacon book is either about me saying it's like painting, or what Lanny was about, or what Francis Bacon was about. And only at the very end do they bother saying, what I felt reading this was, and that's perfect for Francis Bacon, as you say, because he was the great builder of his own myth. So you have to get through a great, thick, briary rose hedge of Bacon being Bacon before you can ever get anywhere near what the pictures are like themselves. And that's how it is. He was a celebrity, But the interviews with David Sylvester, for readers that have never read them and fancy going on a Bacon binge, are just incredible still. Wonderful stuff.
Yeah, you can watch them for hours. So these chunks, I will call them chunks, start with take a seat, why don't you? But they all end in Spanish with a beautiful sentence. And it's... Of course, he died in Madrid, and it's this conversation between the nurse, the sister, and himself. So there's a good reason to do it on the superficial level. But it makes it so much better because it gives it the sound of the Spanish. It's extraordinary, and there's also some French in it, and that's also like blurring everything, right? A hybridity of all the languages. Do you like this? My Spanish is terrible. I have to admit, I had to search for the translation. I really did.
Okay, I don't speak any Spanish. Don't be ashamed of me. I'm a terrible, guilty monolinguist.
Then you just like the sound of it?
Yes, but I'm also writing about someone that did speak good French and a bit of Spanish. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think how his thoughts would have been, and I'm also writing a lot less to Europe and to. I also say this is a painting. I don't just have English language at my disposal. Mm-hmm. My toolbox is full of Velázquez, and in the book, Velázquez, Mantegna, I think, Klein, and Freud, and lots of people. Padua and the south of France and Monte Carlo. I want this stuff in there. And he went to Madrid to see his lover, and I wanted there to be flowing underneath a yearning, deep romanticism, tenderness, love, and hope that you might. You're going to read the line beautifully, I imagine.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. So the words are, because otherwise people think they are left out. Sí, intenta descansar. I think it goes like this, and it means, yes, try to get some sleep, try to get some rest.
Rest easy, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Would you say rest easy?
You are a master interviewer, so you understand this, right? The interview is a bit like a picture. And I like the idea that if this is a bit of a play, say you imagine it like a Beckett play, Bacon, but Bacon versus Bacon, Ruth versus Bacon, right? These sort of floating ideas of two people in conversation. That they know, and we know, that it is a duel. It is a high stakes performance of of sincerity, but also artificiality. And that we love art, and we love galleries, and we love painting, and we love literature and poetry. And we've been talking in this imaginary conversation about food and fucking and sex and our favourite cigarettes and our favourite paintings. And so, of course, we must begin by saying, please, we must finish by saying, okay, rest easy because you're dying. So it's so I figured there was a sort of, I wanted it to have this almost sort of Baroque framing device, because that's the world of painting that he was in. These things have big gold frames. They're worth a lot of money. You wine and you dine and you go around the world and people tell you you're a genius. This is Francis Bacon we're talking about. We couldn't just have the nurse going, okay, bye, darling. You know, he would require some flair, and in a way, this is what I mean about the quality of the encounter in the Passaportes. When I see you again, I will make sure to look you right in the eye, because I couldn't hear on Zoom. Do you see what I mean? Like, next time I go to Francis Bacon and see Francis Bacon in the gallery, I will make sure to just, a bit like the sort of mindfulness, a bit like mental note. I will be so grateful to notice the great range of responses, both idiotic and fuzzy and also quite refined. Like, I want to be. I guess what it is I want to be pleased that we have these formalities, even as I'm trying to dismantle them or push them.
Yeah.
Because they are the history of shared culture, and they are some of the most beautiful things that human beings have ever achieved. And I like the idea that on one's deathbed, when you're being bombarded by this extraordinary sort of flicker fragment of the whole of the 20th century, or the whole of one's life, all one's mistakes, all one's work, that someone also has the time to speak into that, the gesture.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed still after Lanny with this sort of gesture economy of you were cared for, you were loved, you were a great monster, but you were also a lovely man.
There are beautiful words to say to somebody on a deathbed. And there are beautiful words to end the Passaporta Festival with. So, intenta descansar. And thank you, Max Porter. Next time in the flesh, okay?
I hope so. Thank you so much.
See you soon. Bye-bye.